Okay. Linda, thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to have you here. Linda Burns, being a producer in Atlanta. I mean, I feel like you're the producer that everybody knows in Atlanta on the Atlanta film scene. And so I'm really excited to do this interview today. And we're going to dive directly into questions. So I'm going to kind of take you back in time
All
a
right.
little bit. And I want to know initially, just kind of setting the stage, what drew you to filmmaking? And why did you fall in love with it? And in so doing, develop kind of like this wildly eclectic and exciting life as a filmmaker?
It is not the answer most people would expect. I did not grow up wanting to be a filmmaker. It never crossed my mind. I mean, I think even today, people who get in the film industry, their parents don't understand it. They're like, what are you doing? Why don't you have a job? Because they don't understand the freelance ability of it or the freelance style. But I think a lot of people don't think about it unless you kind of grow up in LA. Now in Georgia, it's such a popular thing. People think, oh, well, this is a career, but it was never a career that ever crossed my mind.
Mm.
At Michigan, I took film and TV classes because I thought they were fun. I never thought I was going to do it. It was literally an elective that was fun.
Oh, cool.
And then after I graduated Michigan, I did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I assumed I was going to wait tables somewhere until I could figure it out. And I wanted to be somewhere warm because Michigan is cold and snowy and I don't
Yep.
like that.
Yep.
So, my college roommate, or my best friend's college roommate was from Hawaii, and we all went to Hawaii for her wedding after graduation. And I fell in love with Hawaii, and I was like,
Oh,
why am
wow.
I going to wait tables in the country? So I moved there, eventually kind of got interested in like radio because I had a very low raspy voice. I was a smoker back then. So I had a very
Oh, okay.
raspy
Okay.
voice. And I'd taken radio classes so I could do that.
Wow.
And so I did radio there. I did radio in Key West for a while. And again, still as just something fun to do, it never occurred to me. And when I moved to Atlanta, I was cutting a radio demo at WRFG in Little Five Points. And the guy who was station manager, Dr. Love,
Oh,
he had a show, the Music, Art, and Culture show it wasn't on WRFG. It was on People Channel 14, People Channel 12,
okay.
whatever
Okay.
the community access station is. And I started doing stuff there. And I met this guy, Balaji Bailey, who's like, hey, have you ever thought about actually working in film? And he invited me out to work on this little independent.
Oh,
And
wow.
suddenly, like, everything clicked. They sent me out. This was when downtown Atlanta, I mean, people think downtown Atlanta doesn't have anything now. It really had nothing then.
Mm-hmm.
They'd send me out. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning and they needed a baton to beat the crap out of each other because this was like a sci-fi or a martial arts movie, but they hired real martial arts people, not stunt people, because this guy didn't know better. So they couldn't actually fight without hurting the actor.
Oh.
So they needed a baton at 3 o'clock in the morning in downtown Atlanta, in 1992. And I took a Creative Loafing magazine. I couldn't find one, but there was a Walgreens in the bottom of some hotel that was 24 hours. And back then, Creative Loafing was much thicker than it is now. And it was about the length of what I thought a baton was. I took martial arts when I was in high school, and I rolled it up and I wrapped it in black electrical tape. So it was super tight and you could hit the crap out of something and it wouldn't bend or break.
Right, right.
And everything they would send me out to do, it clicked. I thought outside of the box and came up with a solution that no one else would have thought of that kind of saved the day. And I realized, oh, maybe I've found like my calling.
Yeah.
Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I think I'm a problem solver, and I'm like Tetris is my thing, and how logistics is my thing, just like natural inclinations. I think I love a challenge. So I think I fell in love more necessarily with the process and the people than I did with actually making the art of movies, because for a long time I was the logistics person. I said, I'm just the girl that writes the checks. I have no creative bone in my body. And that was kind of how it started.
Wow.
A very long
That's
answer to your question. Sorry.
no. I think that's perfect, because any producer that I've ever spoken to or listened to in an interview, like, problem solving is just like one of the main aspects of their job. Is just creative problem solving. And that's kind of been my experience of being on sets in the past, is like, how do you, fit this square peg into, a round hole, or vice versa, or however it is, or maybe a triangle in there, like it's definitely, it's all about creative problem solving. Every new day brings a new set of problems that you have to kind of figure out, and that's just kind of, you got to roll with it, and you got to be clever and on your feet, and roll with it, and a plan A, B through Z all the way through, which is awesome. I actually do have a question in here that specifically oriented around that, though.
Sure.
So about creative problem solving, I know that there's kind of like a big tool belt that producers, even like line producers specifically, like you guys have to have like a certain set of skill sets to really be a successful producer. So your bio is an example of just this fantastic, eclectic problem solving kind of producer. Like, I've never read something so fun where it's like, I've wrangled parents and, stopped traffic on the highway to create a crash scene and all this stuff. Like, it's just like, and that's the range of the job. So for you, like, what elements or skill sets do you think you need to be a successful producer, like outside of the problem solving arena?
Well, there's two different kinds of producers in my mind. You've got the nuts and bolts producer, which is more like the line producer, or production manager, really, because I think line producer is kind of that. The line producer is the bridge between nuts and bolts production managing and creative producing. Because as a line producer, you start to get outside the box of how can we be more efficient? How can we save money and time, to thinking of the creative ways to do that, the story ways to do that. So I think, I was somebody who loved, again, I'm going to go back to the problem solving and the engineering. So I come from a long line of engineers and musicians.
Oh, wow.
Math is music.
Yeah.
Math and music. I mean, that is this, it's very mathematical, and my brain has always thought like an engineer. So I've always thought how to solve problems, even if I don't know what I'm doing. And I seem to be pretty good at it. And I think that's the start to production managing, or the logistic side of things. Being able to, a lot of it comes with time. Like, I didn't just walk into a room and go, oh, I know how much it costs to film here. It takes experience. But I think the innate things that you need to be a good producer off the bat are logistics, the ability to think about, okay, well, I've got two people and they've got to go pick up 50 things on a Friday during rush hour traffic, and one of them is going to have to drop a car. How can I send them all over town and have it make sense in the most efficient manner possible? So one of my degrees, or one of the things I studied at Michigan, along with psychology and deviant behavior and psychology of advertising and stuff, was efficiency, organizational psychology.
Cool.
How can you be most organized in what you do? From the design of a comfortable chair for an office worker, how on a kitchen, if for anybody watching The Bear, they're setting up the kitchen in The Bear on, I think, the third or fourth episode, and they're figuring out how to go station to station in 5 seconds. And he keeps coming up with 7 seconds, and it's that efficiency. How are you most efficient? I think all of those things helped me very quickly. Also, strong work ethic. Like, I had no problem working 24 hours on that first job. That was supposed to be a 12-hour day. It turned into 24, and I was there till the bitter end, and I loved every minute of it. So you have to have a strong work ethic. You have to not be afraid to get your hands dirty. You do have to be pretty smart and intuitive, and seeing problems where there aren't problems yet. Foreseeing into the future of that engineer's brain or that forecaster's brain to go, okay, what are all the different problems we might have, and how can I stop all of them before they become an issue? So like all of that stuff I really liked. But then on the creative producer side, it's really just about reading scripts, reading finding out why something works and what doesn't work. You know, I always thought, well, I'm just, again, the girl who writes checks. And David Bruckner, one of my favorite directors, said to me, stop saying that. I give you my script because you give me really good notes, and they're different than all the other people who give me notes because you think about things differently.
Right.
And it was all those independent film sets, you know, as an AD, breaking down the script, trying to figure out how we were going to get stuff done for next to nothing, how we would have to rework things, how the art department makes things look different. Like all of this experience over time got me to a point where I understood how the machine worked, but I didn't understand story. I didn't understand rising and falling action, three-dimensional characters. I used to fix people's scripts by trying to fix dialogue. And that's not how you fix things. That's now I know dialogue's the last thing I think about.
Yeah.
You know, does the third act work? And if it doesn't, it's probably because it wasn't set up right in the first act.
Right.
You know, if you don't care what happens to these characters, it's because you didn't set them up right in the first act, you know? Right. So reading screenplay books, understanding storytelling, the hero's journey, all of that kind of stuff. And then reading screenplays to figure out what works and what doesn't was really, really helpful. And over time, I got really good at, while the writer director was so into their script during rewrites, as you know, as a writer, there's so much going on in your head that's not on the page that I don't know as a writer. Like in your mind, you think you've gotten things across to me that just aren't there anymore.
Right. They're not strong enough or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think having conversations with the writer directors over the years on all these independent films while working on the big budget studio stuff or the big budget commercials, and hearing the conversations about story, being in the room when the director and the DP and the production designer are trying to figure out things, was really helpful in molding all of that. But it takes experience and time. There are producers who come out and, you know, they have a couple of short films or they make an independent feature and they have success and they keep producing, which more power to you. That's great. But you've never run an entire crew. You don't know all the terminology. You don't know what all the gear is and what's possible. And you don't know, you've never run these different crews. And I think the best producers have worked their way up from PAs to either maybe through the locations department, maybe through the AD department. You know, a lot of second ADs become producers and production managers. And I think rushing the process so you can pat yourself on the back and talk about what a cool producer you are isn't the way to go.
Yeah.
Learning and failing and watching other people fail, that's what independent film gives you, is the ability to kind of find your voice and fail. Now, as a producer, you don't want to be failing a lot, but you're going to make mistakes and that's part of it. But you learn more from the mistakes than you do from success. So I think it's a combination of failing to learn things the hard way and have them stick.
Yeah.
Working on other people's projects so you don't make a lot of mistakes. So you learn those mistakes watching other people make them is super important. Yeah. Reading screenplays, self-educating, like all of that. I mean, there's so much to it. Again, a very long roundabout answer, but no, I think being well-rounded, you know, reading lots of books. I don't know shit about being a cinematographer, but I'll read some cinematographer books. Yeah. You know, I have figured out how to edit because I wanted to do something on my own and I wanted to call it completely mine. I didn't want to rely on anybody else, you know? So I think that experience was super valuable, but working with a lot of other people, trading favors, especially as an independent filmmaker starting out, trade favors with other people, get on other people's projects,
100%.
Help them get better. And that way you're all kind of rising up together and getting better as you go. Yeah. But producing and being a good producer, thing I didn't talk about is listening, which obviously I talk more than I listen. But over time, I realized that you have to read between the lines. And I think that's what I meant by being intuitive, because a lot of people won't tell you what they are truly feeling, experiencing, needing, because as a producer, they're like, well, if I ask her for stuff, maybe she's not going to get, I don't know. People don't have honest conversations with producers because I think a lot of producers aren't good at their job and aren't honest with people. And I think that's what allowed me to succeed as well, is I'd be really honest. Like, I don't have the money. How can we make this work? Or I might have some money. Tell me what you really need. Like, don't give me your wish list. I can't get you your wish list, but tell me what you really need and let me see if we can work on that together. And I think that open honesty helps people respect you because they know you're trying to give them what they need to do their job and you respect the job that they do. And that goes back to starting at the bottom and working your way up, because now as an AD, you're interacting with all the different departments. You're hearing them bitch and moan about what they didn't get from the producer. You're seeing their struggle. And as you interact with all these different departments and learn how long things take and why things cost this much money, all of these things are a valuable part of adding all those tools to the toolkit. And it takes years to fill up that toolkit to have what you need to do the job really well.
100%. No, I love that. Now, I mean, based on that, you're talking about like literally it would be a disservice to you to go straight to a producer's role. It's almost as though you have to kind of like put yourself in the shoes of the AD or these different aspects or different roles on a production set in order to really understand, what the needs are, so that you can become a better producer whenever the time comes, right? And so it said in your bio, you have developed projects from script to screen. I mean, all the way through, you're very adept at all these different kinds of roles. And so I'm curious as to which roles are your favorite, which are your least favorite. Just curious.
Well, I want to follow up on one thing. It's okay to just go out and produce something.
Okay.
If you've never done it.
Yeah.
What I didn't do when I started, after I was producing short films, is walk around with a business card calling myself a producer. I was a PA who produced independent films on the side, or AD'd, or line produced, or, did wardrobe or craft service or whatever. So the disservice is the person who starts as a producer on a low budget independent and then trying to just produce instead of learning the other crafts that are going to support your understanding of what it truly means to be a producer. What's my favorite role? Line producing is probably my favorite thing.
Okay.
Were you asking my favorite project or my favorite job description?
Like your favorite job description, like part of the filmmaking process. What's your favorite part?
I love line producing. So, but I'm going to break it into two different things. When people are paying me to do stuff, like in commercial world, my real job that paid me a lot of money, my favorite thing was line producing, because I love being efficient. I love not dealing with clients, which you do as a producer, because while I've had some great ones, the majority weren't great. So if I don't have to deal with them, awesome. I love figuring out the best people for the job. I love figuring out how much things are going to cost and how to reduce those costs as much as possible by being efficient and by hiring the right person to do the job. So again, it's that puzzle figuring out that I really love the line producer side. Now on the independent film side, development is my favorite part of the process. Like I would, development hell, oh, get me out of it. Like I understand we all want to go make the project, right? But I love development. I love sitting down, like reading a screenplay, sitting down with the writer and or writer director and figuring out what works and what doesn't and why, and then how to solve that within the budgetary ramifications of whatever we're trying to make. I love making sure those characters are three-dimensional, making sure that, if it's a thriller, you're on the edge of your seat, whatever it is, figuring out, like, I read a script and one of the first things if it's something that's highly marketable, like for a mass audience, is like, okay, what are the toys that I would get at McDonald's, like the marketing campaign. So I love that big picture aspect of, well, who's the audience? Starting out from a bullseye, like who's our core audience?
Right.
And then who's the next layer and the next layer and the next layer. and how do we reach them and how do we find them independently of, big TV commercials, and, who's the right cast that would go in this? Where would we shoot it? How can we combine locations? Like figuring out, if it was going to go on the festival circuit, where would it go? So and that's all to me done in development. Most people wait till, it's done. Now we're going to figure out what festivals we want to go to. And now we're going to figure out our marketing plan. You need to be figuring that out way back here.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning,
Right.
I like to reach out to distributors and say, hey, I have this script. You seem like a distribution company that might be interested in something like this. Can I send it to you to get your feedback if this is something that you might be interested in?
Yeah.
I don't ask them to distribute it because they're not going to do that before looking at it, but I want their feedback because they are in the distribution business. They know the talent, they know what's marketable, they know what's hot, what the trends are, if this fits the trend, if this is going to break out, a new musical and bring musicals back or whatever it is. So all of that kind of high functioning thinking about stuff is that's what I love. I
love that. I was listening to this podcast called The Producer's Angle not too long ago. And I remember they said there was this producer who would, present kind of producing basics to a class. And she would say, you need 3 things to make a movie. And what are they? And they would usually get the first 2, but the last one they would never get. So the first one was, well, you need a script, Number 2, you need funding. And number 3, you hit it, is you need distribution. And I think a lot of people, especially writers, we do not think about that aspect at the beginning of a project. We're just so enveloped in the story. But, in order to bring that script to screen, as you have, like, you do have to think of those back, that distribution, from the very beginning. Who is the audience and how am I going to get this to them? Which is so vital. And from you've experienced a big part, like so many different aspects of the production set. And I've experienced a few different roles on my production sets, but I would love for you, if you could, try to kind of paint a production set picture, like painting a picture for beginners, people who have never set foot on a production set. What is it like, if you could paint the setting a little bit?
As a non-writer, I will have a hard time painting the scene. I am much better at editing than creating. It's controlled chaos, whether it is a big budget production or a no budget production, whether you have 3 people or whether you have 3,000 people, it is always controlled chaos. Your best laid plans will never happen. Something is always going wrong. That's you mentioned this earlier. One of my favorite things is the fact that every day is a new day and it's completely different than the day before. Right. And as soon as you think, oh, I know how to make a movie, your next project will have all kinds of different challenges. There'll be all kinds of new stuff you didn't know. So, there's a lot of people running around very specifically doing their own jobs that all somehow come back together to make the whole thing work. And no matter how stressful and awful some parts of production can be, it all does somehow manage to come together in the end to get it finished. But yeah, it's controlled chaos. And I don't know how else to explain it. It's like, if you've ever watched a video of like the old Black Fridays, shopping at Thanksgiving, where like everybody is up against the door waiting to come in and the doors come in and everybody runs out and they're running around like getting stuff, and fighting over things. That's kind of like what it's like. Hopefully we're never coming to fisticuffs on set, but
right.
That's kind of, it's that same kind of, it's that hurry up and wait. We wait, and then it's utter chaos, and then we're shooting something, and then it's a bunch of people running around, chaos again. I think it's very intimidating the first time you ever get on set, especially on a bigger set.
100%.
The first time you get on any set, you're going to be nervous, which is expected. But I think you never have enough money, you never have enough time. So no matter what you're on, it's always that controlled chaos where you're losing light. You got to get the shot now. But there's also this kinetic energy as well with all of these creative people, with all of these different personalities, some big, some small, coming together to create art. There's really not a lot of industries, I think, that create that same kind of atmosphere,
Right.
that just this
Right.
supercharged electricity of chaos and weirdness and art all wrapped into one,
Yeah. It's unique. I mean,
Absolutely.
it has such a significant impact on our culture and our society and our childhood, and our adult life. I mean, like, because it has such a unique aspect to it. I mean, it's just, there's really nothing else like it. In my opinion, but I'm curious. So I'm curious as to, all these people running around on set, controlled chaos, you do your job. So for you as a line producer, what are some of the most important relationships on set that you have, and how do you personally cultivate productive working partnerships with your crew or your cast or who you have to interact with there? Because that's like that's how everything gets done, right? Is those partnerships, those relationships that you build around you. And so, how do you do it? Who are the relationships that you zero in on that you're like, I have to make sure that this relationship right here is the most efficient, best it could possibly be? And how do you cultivate that?
I don't know if there's anybody. I mean, yes, it's important that I have the trust of the director 100%. So because if I have their trust, they know they don't have to worry about any of the shit that they're worrying about. They can focus on directing actors and telling the story. So if they know I have their back and I'm going to create, for lack of a better term, a safe space for them to work with their actors and get stuff, and they don't have to worry about any of that controlled chaos offset, I think that's super important.
Okay.
The director of photography is dealing with the grip electric department and the camera department, and those three departments are traditionally, I'm not going to say they're not in it for the art, but most of them are in it for the money as well as the art. A lot of grip electrics are fantastic technicians, but it's still a job for them showing up. They don't care about coming and working on your little independent film. They don't give a shit, unless maybe they want to be a DP and they're able to step up into that position, and there's plenty of people in our established film industry that do independent work. But I think the DP, because that's the person it has to be lit pretty. You got to be able to light it in a timely fashion, and you don't want anybody slow walking anything, but any department can slow walk you if you're being a jerk to them. Makeup, hair, wardrobe, everything takes time. I think I have a personality, I'm an acquired taste. I'm not going to lie. I know I'm an acquired taste. I've known this all of my life. You love me or hate me, but either way, most people respect me. And I think I have a personality that can get along with all kinds of people. Rich, poor, whatever your sexual orientation is, whatever your skin color is, I find a way, educated, uneducated, I find a way to bond with a lot of different people. And I think that helps, but I also think when you find somebody who's good at their job and you let them do their job, which is respectful of their artistry, that goes a long way. Like making sure somebody has what they need, the staff they need, and the money they need to do their job. And if they don't, doing whatever you can to try to make their world better. I can't afford to get you two more assistants, but I can throw a couple of PAs in the mix. This is obviously a non-union world. I can throw a couple of PAs at you, you're going to be training them, but I can give you 5 extra hands because I can afford to feed 5 people, but I can't pay 5 people, So I think listening to what they need and why, and having a conversation so that you both get to a place where you're comfortable in what you're not comfortable, but you have what you need to make it. And you can tell I'm working hard to help you get what you need, I think goes a long way. And that comes back to understanding what everybody's jobs are, understanding why it takes so long to do makeup and certain kinds of makeup, and giving them the time and being respectful of that as much as you can, while also pushing them along. I think that goes a long way, but I understand what all the gear is. I could have a conversation with the key grip and the best boy, electric or the best boy grip or, you know, the wardrobe person. I understood the tools that they needed to do their job, how many people they were probably going to need to do their job.
Mhm.
And I think that is a conversation that earns respect. I used to have conversation, you know, the DP, you go on your tech scout, right? The DP puts and the gaffer and the key grip push their wish list together for what they want for the job.
Mhm.
Well, when I would get that bid, but first I'd look at it before I'd even go. And I'm like, okay, well, we already know we're going to have to cut half of this. I don't know what you're thinking, but sure, go ahead, get the dollar amount this is going to cost. And then we can really have a conversation. But I could sit down with that DP and say, okay, all three of these camera heads, like they all do the same thing. Like there's no reason you want all three, but you don't need all three. Pick one because that will automatically take $10,000 off our bill. Now we still have another 20,000 to go through. So let's work together to figure out, you know, what you need and understanding what all the gear was and why they needed it and what the gear did. That I think builds respect in between departments and just being respectful of people. I mean, I could be an absolute asshole. You know, I mean, people talk about having a no asshole policy. My no asshole policy is I should be the only asshole on set.
Yeah.
You know, because that's going to be part of my job is I have to say no. But I think if you obviously know what you're doing and you're trying to treat people right and you're feeding them well and you're listening to their complaints and you're not dismissing them, but you're trying to do what you can to make their lives better, that makes a difference. And that goes for every department from locations to, you know, where people park their trucks. I mean, it's, you know, no department is to me better than any other department or works harder. Everybody has a stressful job.
Yeah.
And everybody's jobs are stressful in different ways. Some are more physical, some are more intellectual, you know, but everybody has a hard job. And if you, what's the word I'm looking for? I haven't been able to come up with the same word. So I keep saying the same things over and over again.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it's like, it sounds like to me, like if you can speak the language of every department head, essentially come at them specifically looking at their list of needs and have a sit down, a realistic conversation of like, I am trying to get you what you need, but let's work together here. And like you said, approach it in a very respectful manner and you're speaking their language. I mean, that seems to be kind of like the end, you know, of how you can really build like a good foundation, like a good partnership with all these different department heads that are out there. I think that's very, very valuable because I mean, there's people, they do such different things on set. Is like oftentimes you're speaking different languages, you know, on that front. So as a line producer, somebody who is an effective line producer is somebody who can go in and literally, you know, speak the language of whoever's in there. I think that's incredibly valuable. So I love that.
On the actor side, I realized I didn't address that. That's a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's making sure, again, like the director, that you're giving them that safe space to do their job, that you are protecting them. You know, it's a closed set. If there's nudity nowadays, making sure that there is, oh God, I can't think of the name of it. The choreographer for sex scenes. Why is the name of that? It's a new position and it's not coming to me. But
maybe it's like an intimacy choreographer or something.
Yeah. Oh God, I can't even, I'm going to be chastised for not being able to remember it, but, you know, making sure that they have the food they need, that they are eating, you know, because a lot of times they're not going to want to eat before certain scenes or they're nervous or whatever. So you need to make sure that you have what they need. Just actually giving a shit. I think, you know, what it all comes down to is actually giving a shit and being a human being. Because so many people say, oh, well, line producers, they're such jerks. They're mean. They don't care about anybody. And you know what? There are plenty of them that are like that. They have a job to do. They're paid for the studio, by the studio to do their job. Their job is not to be your friend. They're your boss. You know, a line is drawn. But I find that if you are a human being and you can treat people like they are human beings and actually care what happens to them, that goes a long way to earning people's respect. And when people know that they that you care about them, they're going to go above and beyond to do their job and do their job well.
Right.
So you're going to get a better performance out of the actor and a better performance out of the crew member, because now you're with a whole group of people that all actually care about one another and this
Right.
project, and that I think makes a huge difference.
I love that. No, I really like that a lot. In terms of like young filmmakers who are on set for the very first time, what are some of the most basic mistakes that you see out of young filmmakers getting on set for the first time or second time or whatever it is?
Yeah. And you're talking about, like, when you mean filmmaker, you're not talking about like the writer director who goes off and make their short film.
Right.
You're talking about the crew member starting off as like probably a PA somewhere.
Somewhere in that level. Correct. Yeah.
Garbage advice is fake it till you make it. Don't fake it till you make it, because we can smell you a mile away. We know you're new. You're not faking it to anyone. So don't lie. Lying bad. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to walk around going, hey, it's my first day, I don't know anything, teach me.
Right.
But
Right.
So many people are afraid to make a mistake, which everyone's going to do, because that's just part of being human. They're so afraid to make a mistake or let someone know that they're new, that they beat themselves up. They're stuck in their own head. They're not really listening. Ask questions at appropriate times, but when someone tells you to do something, let them know, hey, I've never done this before. And most times they're going to say, okay, good luck, go figure it out. Ask another PA, ask someone else who is more established. I run the PA Academy, and a lot of kids leave that workshop, 2-day workshop, and they're on set for the first time. And at the end of the day, these people come up and like, wow, you really, like, how long have you been working? You seem to really know your stuff. And they're like, it's my first day. And they're like, well, where did you learn this stuff? And it's stuff we taught them in that workshop to give them more confidence for the first time they do show up, how to read a call sheet, how to put up a pop-up tent, what the terminology is, how the day goes, what your duties and responsibilities might be. But biggest thing is, listening, really listening, which is hard sometimes when you have a walkie-talkie in your ear and someone is in front of your face talking at the same time, but learning to listen, pay attention, not being on your phone. Because there is a lot of hurry up and wait. There's, things have changed since when I started, because everybody used to yell, PAs used to run, you never used to sit. Now you can't run because that's a liability. You should sit and take breaks because no one takes care of you. I'm like, whatever. I know we should be taking care of people better. Our industry is toxic. That's, and that's a part of it. Like, we work long hours and we work hard. If you don't like it, go somewhere else, sit in an air-conditioned office. That doesn't mean abuse people. We should have 12-hour days. But I think the big mistakes are being on your phone, trying to pretend like you know information when you don't, not really listening, or just being aware of your surroundings and what's going on. Because a lot of times, you'll be shooting and then, you cut and you'll see somebody kind of looking around. Well, when you see somebody looking around, ask them what they're looking for and if you can help them. Like, they're obviously looking and needing something. Maybe they don't need help, but responding to that and paying attention to what's happening around you. And that's that intuitiveness. Knowing when someone needs something ahead of it, being, reading the call sheet, reading the sides if you get them, if you have an opportunity to get the script. A lot of this big budget stuff is proprietary, so they don't give out call sheets. They don't give out the script at all. But educating yourself as much as possible on what you're shooting that day, what's next, what is needed, thinking about what should be anticipated. Don't move on it yet until you know. But thinking ahead and starting to build those tools.
I like that. You actually answered my next question as well, which the follow-up was, what's the best advice to give to young filmmakers? But you kind of you efficiently put it all together right there, which was perfect. So I want to now I'm kind of bringing us back. I'm going to zoom in a little bit.
Sure.
And kind of close this out a little bit also on this question, but I want to kind of focus in on the Atlanta film scene a little bit. Since, that's your stomping grounds, that's where, we are right now. And I want to know what's kind of on the horizon for Linda Burns. Is there anything fun, exciting going out there that you're you're excited about. I know we're in the midst of the WGA strike right now. There's a lot of, stuff up in the air, but what's happening on your horizon in the Atlanta film scene?
So yeah, this can be a little bit longer answer. So
Okay,
I
perfect.
didn't realize it was 7 years ago until my husband and I were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago. But 7 years ago, I quit the film industry.
Oh,
For my 50th birthday, apparently I was having a midlife crisis. No, just kidding. But for my 50th birthday, so over time, like when you're first starting out, you don't take time off. Like I worked 2 years straight without a day off. Probably
wow.
worst thing I did. I'm pretty sure I lost a couple clients that way because I might have been a
Mm.
raging bitch by the end of
Okay.
2 years. I'm sure there's a couple PAs who never wanted to work for me again.
They're like, oh my God, Linda Burns.
I mean, I was a tyrant, but they were screwing up.
I gotcha.
It's like, and they were good PAs who were screwing up. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a one job that I'm like, ooh,
Yeah.
never.
Yeah.
I was bad. But I like to take time off for my birthday. My birthday is right around 4th of July. So I would take like a week off or 2 weeks off or a month off if my husband and I both had time off. And we go fishing. And we go fishing in North Florida, along the Forgotten Coast where he grew up. And I took off a month for my birthday. And he was working, I was by myself, which was fabulous. But I had always been curious about this little fishing village that's right next door to the place that we would go, and why there were only old men fishing, why there were no younger people involved and not a lot of women, which, makes sense. It's very patriarchal and red state area. But I did not understand why this was. And I started asking questions of the locals, who I had befriended over the years coming there. And I found a really interesting story that I wanted to tell. And I told my husband, hey, well, at that point, not my husband, after being together like a couple decades, we got married shortly after that. But I was like, I think I want to stay and tell this story. I have never shot a camera. We bought an A7S II. I'd never picked up a camera, let alone shot one. I knew the basics of like little handy cams. I bought a zoom and boom, a little zoom recorder and a boom pole. I can't light my way out of a paper bag, but I'm really good with available light and what things should look like. So I could available light stuff.
Okay.
And what was supposed to be like 1 month turned into 5 months that I took off.
Wow.
And every day, like, because my husband was paying for my lavish lifestyle, and I felt bad he was working and I wasn't, I had my fishing boat there. So every day I had to accomplish 3 things. I had to either set up an interview, knock on fishermen's doors and find interviews to do, or do interviews, or both. And I had to catch my own seafood. Like, I was not going to be buying protein. I was like, no, I have to feed myself.
Wow.
And I have to be moving forward every day in this documentary process.
That's legit.
And I did it for 5 months, and I was in the best shape of my life, carrying around all that gear up and down stairs, out on the fishing boat, casting a net. I mean, that's why I got married a couple of years after that. Cause I was like, I'm never going to look this good again. Give me a slutty dress and let's get married on the beach. Cause I'm never going to be this thin and hot again. But I took a 5-month hiatus thinking, well, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to quietly tell people I'm not available. And 7 years later, it's stuck. Like, I am not interested in going back. Mostly because I found that so many producers didn't know their jobs that I was going to be forced into making decisions that could get people killed, i.e. rust. I know the people who were involved in that. And they know better. I know they know better. How much of that was them acquiescing to the money people, the producers and money people who don't know what they're doing, who have no experience. Not to say bad things can't happen on experienced sets, because they do all the time. But I just realized that I was not happy. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the problem solving. I love the people, but independent film isn't sustainable as a living. I did not want to move from commercial world to film and TV in the established world. I would have had to take multiple steps back to do it. And I just don't like working for 9 months straight without a day off. My husband loves that. Give me one job for 9 months, give me a 3-month hiatus, bring me back for season 2.
Yeah.
You know, that's his, but I like working with different people constantly. I love the lifestyle that was making commercials. But I don't like clients. I realize, like, do I want on my gravestone, like, I made lots of money for, you know, insert product here. And I haven't missed it. But what I do love to do is I do love education. I love teaching people about the industry and talking about the industry. So I've continued to do classes. I've had a writer's room over a decade. I think we're coming up maybe on, if it's not, I think it's past, but like our 10-year anniversary. So I started a project called the D-Girl Project, and it was for writers and directors, independent filmmakers in Georgia, in Atlanta, really, Atlanta metro area, to teach them how to pitch their project, because a lot of people had good ideas, but didn't know how to market, didn't know how to pitch, didn't know how to write a log line, didn't know how to write a synopsis, like beautiful script, shit log line. You're never going to sell it with this. So I wanted to train people how to do the log line, the synopsis, eventually how to do like lookbooks. And we did that for a couple of years. And then they decided, well, we'd like to continue on. So we started writing spec screenplays, like a Christmas episode for Call the Midwife, you know?
Nice.
And we did a couple of those, and then they still wanted to continue. I'm like, I'm done. I don't know what else why we're meeting for 3 hours once a month. Like, I think, you know, and they said, well, I think we'd like to continue to meet as a writer's room. And I said, well, from my Florida adventure, I've got an idea for a story that I think would be interesting, that talks about the plight of these filmmakers, that deals with this woman who retired at 50, former military, like not me, but loosely based on my experiences there.
Okay.
And making it kind of this murder mystery kind of show, dealing with, you know, racism and classism and ageism and a lot of big concepts in this thing. But they've been writing, they finished a pilot. You know, they only meet an hour and a half a month. So it's taken a really long time. I think it's taken two years to write the pilot, maybe longer. But I'm excited to see what we create with this 8-episode series. And it is something that I would come out of retirement for, to film. My husband would direct it. And we'd shoot it in North Florida where we live. So that's kind of exciting for me. But you know, I think if I have one goal left of my legacy, it would be to get more minority filmmakers in the industry. It's my big push. And I know my white students get sick of my liberal bullshit, is that my white lady liberal bullshit. But the city of Atlanta is 50% Black and the state is 30% Black. I don't see a 50% or a 30% Black population on our film sets. And you know, it is people who, for when I first started, Black people did the music videos, white people did the commercials. And then you had a somewhat mix on features and TV, but there wasn't enough. But it was just, there weren't enough people getting put into the pipeline. And there isn't enough work when you're first starting out to be financially viable for most people to start a career. And unless you have a side hustle, are independently wealthy, live in your parents' basement, have a, you know, I mean, there are financial ramifications to getting started. And I would like to see more Latinos in our industry. I would like to see more Asians in our industry. There just aren't a lot. I think we've done a good balance with women. There were 4 women in the camera department when I started. Now there's like 800 or some crazy thing. But I would like to see more stories from other cultures, from other nationalities, from other socioeconomic levels that I don't think we necessarily see. So I think if I have one legacy left before I die in this industry, it's bringing more people who have historically not been able to be brought into the industry and make that the norm.
I love that. No, I think that's a really wonderful thought to close on too, because it's just like, I think that's what the Atlanta film market is. I mean, I think it's so full of that kind of diversity, and that, man, it's just, I think it's going to be awesome. I'm really excited just to see about the horizon in the future, you know, and I really appreciate you, providing your insights and your education, your awesome experience as a producer, to the next level of young filmmakers and writers like myself who are kind of coming up. And I really appreciate your time, Linda. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me, because I love,
Absolutely.
obviously, to talk about this stuff.
Awesome.
But one last piece of advice, just
Yeah.
go do it. Don't wait for, like, you can shoot a movie on, well, you can't
On
even
a
see
little
my
phone. Yeah.
iPad.
Yeah. There you go.
But too many independent filmmakers want to do it for glory. Don't do it for glory. Learn your craft and find your voice. So you have something to say. And by the time you have something to say, people want to listen because your movie doesn't suck, So practice and find your craft, but just go do it. Like, go pick up a camera. You don't need people. You can take your 3-year-old in the backyard and make a movie with your iPad. Like, just go do it. Don't get caught up in the trappings of filmmaking. But start off slow and start building and learn your craft and find your voice as a filmmaker. And I think, just like producing, you will have much more success once you know what you're doing and have something to say, and then people will want to listen.
I love that. Awesome. Thank you, Linda. That's perfect. That is perfect.